Donald Trump is facing the worst political crisis of his second term, and this time, the attack is coming from inside the Republican Party itself. Allied senators are furious, the polls are tanking, and the word impeachment is circulating in Washington again. In this video, I'll show you why the White House is on maximum alert. But first, hit like and subscribe to the channel. The biggest political risk for Donald Trump right now isn't coming from the Democratic side of the aisle. It's coming from inside the Republican Party itself, and that completely changes the calculus inside the White House. The most recent flashpoint was the deal signed with Iran. For weeks, the president sold the negotiation as a diplomatic triumph, capable of ending the military conflict between the two countries. But when the full terms of the Memorandum of Understanding finally reached the Senate, the reaction from a large part of the Republican Party was one of discomfort and, in some cases, outright revolt. The deal calls for the immediate and permanent end of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, with Iran committing to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which had been practically closed since February. In exchange, Washington committed to developing a plan worth up to $300 billion for the reconstruction and development of Iran. It's exactly this point, the multi-billion-dollar fund earmarked for rebuilding the Iranian regime, that has triggered the harshest reaction among the president's own allies. Even among the president's most loyal supporters, the $300 billion proposal has become the main source of discomfort within the party. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana was among the first to publicly break from the White House narrative, calling the deal the worst foreign policy mistake in decades. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, normally one of the president's staunchest defenders, said he believes Trump is getting bad advice on the issue. And Senator Tom Tillis described the information made available so far as insufficient for any serious evaluation of the deal. What makes this episode even more revealing is the historical contrast. For decades, the Republican Party built its foreign policy identity by attacking exactly this kind of negotiation, the same kind of criticism they leveled at the nuclear deal signed by the Obama administration with Iran in 2015. Now, part of the Republican caucus itself is using similar language to describe the deal made by the president they claim to support. This isn't an isolated act of dissent. It's a symptom of something deeper, a growing perception among Republican lawmakers that the White House is making major foreign policy decisions without adequately consulting Congress and without offering justifications that hold up to public scrutiny. And when that kind of distrust takes hold inside a party that controls both houses of Congress, the political consequences tend to show up fast. Tensions between Donald Trump and the Senate aren't limited to the Iran deal, but that episode exposed a dynamic that had already been building for months. Republican leadership in the Senate, including Majority Leader John Thune, has faced growing difficulty aligning the president's agenda with the expectations of senators who answer to increasingly distrustful constituents. On more than one occasion, decisions announced by the White House caught Republican lawmakers off guard, forcing them to publicly react to agreements and statements that hadn't even been discussed in advance within the party itself. This institutional friction is happening at the exact moment the president's approval numbers are hitting the lowest points of his second term. And here the data deserves attention because it isn't coming from a single isolated poll. It's coming from practically every major institute that tracks American public opinion. According to the most recent survey from PBS News, NPR, and Marist, only 36% of Americans approve of Trump's performance as president, the lowest mark of his entire second term. Among independent voters, 64% disapprove of his job performance. The problem for the president is that this erosion isn't limited to voters who always opposed him. The decline is showing up among groups that were central to his 2024 victory: rural voters, independents, young voters, and even part of his own 2024 base. Tracking from the Silver Bulletin shows the president's net approval hit a new low for the second term in May, before partially recovering in June. Even so, a worse level than what was recorded during this same period in both Trump's first term and the start of the Biden administration. Even among Republicans themselves, the wear is already measurable. The president's approval among Republicans and Republican leaning voters dropped from 73% in January to 68% currently, according to the Pew Research Center. A decline that, while it may seem modest, is significant within a historically disciplined base. This set of numbers explains why more and more Republican senators are quietly calculating how much distance to keep from the White House. In politics, when a president's popularity drops at this pace, the first reaction from lawmakers in his own party isn't automatic loyalty, it's electoral self preservation. And it's exactly this survival instinct that's making negotiations between Trump and the Senate increasingly difficult, even on issues that, at another moment, would be considered natural priorities for any Republican administration. It's within this backdrop, a weakened president and an increasingly divided party, that the word impeachment is circulating again behind the scenes in Washington, and this time not just among Democrats. Trump himself has publicly raised the possibility, warning Republican allies that a loss in the midterm elections could open the door to a third impeachment process against him. In a meeting with the House Republican caucus, the president said that if Republicans don't win the midterm elections, he will be impeached. Republican strategists have already turned this risk into a campaign tool. According to Republican strategist Matt Gorman, Trump knows the risks from personal experience, and it's clear he doesn't want to relive that. Investigations and impeachment, he knows, are all on the table if Democrat Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House. On the other side, Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin, who led the second impeachment process against Trump, acknowledges that this path alone wouldn't resolve the broader political issues the party intends to address. But the central point here isn't whether a new impeachment will actually happen. It's what this mere possibility reveals about the balance of power in Washington right now. Trump's approval among independent voters dropped to 34%, below the 36% level that preceded the 2018 Democratic wave when the party won 41 House seats. This kind of historical number tends to precede major shifts in the makeup of Congress. And Democrats have noticed the opportunity. A recent NBC News poll shows Democrats with a 5-point advantage in the fight for control of Congress, driven largely by rejection of the current administration. If that advantage holds at the ballot box in November, the Democratic Party wouldn't just regain oversight power over the White House, it would gain the institutional ability to open new investigations, summon testimony, and, depending on the severity of cases that emerge in the coming months, formally revisit an impeachment process. It's this scenario, more than any single isolated accusation, that has the White House on maximum alert. Because the real political threat to Donald Trump is no longer just Democratic opposition. It's the real possibility of losing control of his own party at the exact moment he needs it most to govern and to survive politically until the end of his term. This is the political picture taking shape in Washington. A president losing ground within his own party, polls in freefall, and the word impeachment moving back to the center of the debate. The coming months, up until the November elections, will be decisive in determining whether this Republican fracture deepens or whether the White House manages to contain the damage. If this content helped you understand what's really happening, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to follow upcoming updates. And tell me in the comments, do you think Republicans will keep backing Trump until the end of his term?